Alright guys, worked all day on a competition between these, the GT40Ps, that I have one head done. It's still stock valve sizes, 185 and 1.46. And they're going to go heads up, pound for pound, with the E7TE copies. They're 1.94, 1.6 valves. Okay, the throats on the E7, 1.7, 1.385. Okay, you can see the bolt percentages there, 87.6 for the intake, 86% for the exhaust. Okay, GT40p, 1.654 throat on the intake, 1.29 throat on the exhaust. Okay, so the 1.654 throat is 89.4% on the intake, and the 1.29 throat is 88.3% on the exhaust. Port sizes. GT40p is 157cc intake port. That's up from about 145 stock. The exhaust is 56 cc's. And the chamber is about 63 cc's. The E7TEs have a smaller port at 146.5. The ones I sent out to DV were about 150, but this has got the boss in the middle, holding the guide. DV's had boss almost totally removed. So that's where I think those extra cc's went. And also the CFM that I'm missing. The exhaust is 51.5 cc's. The chambers are about 65 cc's. Okay, tons of flow testing today. And as you can see by the temperature, the bench really doesn't like it over 80 degrees. So if I've posted flows for these two heads before, I guarantee they were higher than they are today because it's hot in here. Okay, so E7TE, right? 1.94 with a back cut over here. GT40p, 1.85 with a back cut. This is a before flows, and then I did some more work to get some more higher lift, and the only thing that came up were like the last four lifts. But let's take a look. Now, it's kind of interesting because the E7TE's got a smaller port with a bigger valve, right? This has got a bigger port, smaller valve. How do they do? Okay, 32 versus 29.5. I've got my little pluses and minuses, right? You'll be able to see each one. 64.6, 61.3, 101.4, 93.1, 139, 124.5, 172.6, 152.6. Notice how much of a difference that is. The E7TEs are pretty efficient for what they are. 194.8 versus 178. Big difference, right? You have to realize at 250 lift on the E7TEs, that's more than that head flowed stock at 500 lift. Okay? It just gives you an idea of how much the efficiency's gone up. Okay, where were we? 0.35. 206.8 versus 193. 210.1 versus 205.9. 215.2, 222.1. Finally, the bigger port comes in at 500 lift. And it only beats it by a few CFM. Now, I also tried that the GT40p at the very end here without a back cut, all right? And it popped up the... It didn't... Actually, it was a loser all the way across. Every single lift range, it was a loser. So, but it's good to test that way. So, as far as I'm concerned, the GT40Ps need a bigger valve, I think. I worked on that quite a bit. The port is actually a nice port. You know what it does? It reminds me a lot of a Chevy Vortec head. Because the Chevy Vortec head is designed pretty good stock. So it's stingy giving you gains. Well, the GT40P, I took a lot of metal out of it and the flow's barely changed, which tells me it's not the ports. Now, this head is basically done. But I have another set of GT40Ps coming in with slightly bigger valves with a 50-degree seat on them. If those really do much better than these, and I expect them to, I will be probably cutting these for a bigger valve, the GT40Ps. Okay, take a look at, here, let me stop this. Okay, I forgot I did this flow too. I also used one of the EQ Ferrara valves without a back cut on the E7TEs. Notice how much, you can see exactly, right? Plus, minus, 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 right in the meat of the curve, all minuses. But take a look at the top end, at 350 plus, right? Up, up, up. Interesting, right, guys? Okay, let's take a look at our exhausts, right? This is the E7TE's got a 1.6, it's got a radius on the top of the valve. And that's going to go heads up against the 1.46 size Ford valve. Okay, let me see if I can get these numbers close. Okay, let me put the pluses in. Okay, I did all the pluses and minuses. Take a look at the 1.46 GT40p. It's minus, minus, minus all the way down. It is a loser. It's also got a much smaller valve, right? But the port actually isn't smaller. We've got, it's actually bigger. It's 56 cc's versus 51.5 cc's. So I'm kind of a small exhaust kind of guy, you know. But I like the bigger valve because it introduces area faster than the smaller valve. Now, I have no doubt that GT40p exhaust would pick up huge with a bigger valve. So take a look at 500 on both of them, right? You got 178, which is a really good number for an E7TE head. Remember that head, that exhaust flow on that head is only about 120, 125 stock, I think it is. That's all it is. Because it's only 158 on the intake, 160 on the intake. Okay, you got 192.6 with the small pipe, 202.8 with the big pipe. And the GT40Ps, you're going with a 162.3, right? 174.3 with the small pipe, 186.3 with the big pipe. Okay, some obvious things to take a look at. The bowl on the E7TE is much more funnel shape because you can't go real wide at the bottom because these heads have a thin spot right in the middle of the bowl. So in order to not make a sprinkler out of it, they're a little bit smaller. Now, does that mean every set of E7TEs are going to look like this? That's not necessarily true. I'm pretty sure the ones I did for DV were wider across the bottom of the bowl than these are. All right. Now take a look. Take a look at the GT40Ps. Take a look at how far back that left side of the bowl goes. That's really got a big chunk taken out of it. It's got a ton more area right as it's starting to make the turn, which is a good thing, right? You want to increase your area, right, to drop your pressure and slow the air and make it so it can make that turn. Remember, Fords have this long dog leg here, right? It's bent. This port is bending this way, right? But we have to get our airflow out this way. So if you take a big chunk out of the side, it helps it with this direction here. Okay, this is the short side radius we're looking at on the GT40p. It's definitely better than the E7. The E7 short side is really tough, and there's not much metal. If you go to a 1.94, you are really close to water trying to get a decent shape in that short side radius. Okay, here's the short side radius of the E7TE. Notice how much the bowl is not kicked out on the E7, and this is as thin as you really want to make it. Okay. The short side radius is much straighter. It's you just cannot lay it back enough. Not without, these aren't anyway. I mean, the ones I did for DV, I felt like I was able to get the short side to lay back a lot better on that one. But these, there is just a few short side radiuses that are real thin, so not happening. Okay, E7TE. I don't know what you can say about it. It's, you know, it's funny because at DV seminars, what I would say about the E7TE, it is the absolutely perfect head to demonstrate the ability of porting because it's so bad stock. Which it really is. I mean, stock, it's just awful. I've got a set of E7TEs coming in, and I'm going to do a workup from completely stock, and I think we're going to go through piece by piece and see what really makes the difference on those. I personally think I can do a better E7TE with a 1.85 valve, because I think I'll be able to make that short side radius a little better. We're going to find out. Okay. GT40p. You can see how much wider it is across the bowl. The top of the bowl, even. These actually have a decent sized pinch. I should compare the pinches. Okay, the pinches are close, but they're not the same. The GT40p's got a little bit bigger pinch, and they're both pretty much... They're almost as wide as you can make them, I should say. You know, if you really want to push your luck, you could probably get a little more out of them. Obviously, if you tube them, you can get more out of them. Okay, the calculation on the GT40p is 266.7 CFM. So the pinch is not holding it back. And I'm going to say, I haven't calculated the E7, but the pinch is not holding it back. Okay. E7. GT40p. Yeah, that's probably rust because I did pour these today. So they definitely got to get another coat of oil. Okay. Exhaust E7TE. You can still see it's quite rectangular down at the bottom. Yes, I machined the entire guide boss out. And the roof did get raised quite a bit. It's not dangerously thin. The only place that this bowl is really thin is right about here. It's got a thin spot, but it's still about 100,000, so it's fine. That exhaust port actually works quite well. You can see my 45, and then I radius it in. But these actually have quite a big bowl, quite a big throat, which we went over already. Okay, you can see GT40p. Definitely scalloped out on the cylinder wall side quite a bit more. Come on, phone. All right, let's try that a little differently. Okay. And one thing I can say about this, I did a bunch of work to this this port, and I only gained a little bit of flow, but it got super quiet at the higher lifts. So what does the quietness tell you? All right, it's an important thing on the flow bench. I probably should have tried it at different depressions, but I haven't done that yet. Okay, this is the E7TE exhaust. The short side radius is real low. It comes like right off the seat and out it goes. But it works quite well for what it is. Okay. There we go. Okay, GT40p. The short side radius is almost straight right off the seat. And then it gets real wide. It's overall, it looks like it's a much better exhaust port than the E7TE. I think the only thing that's holding it back is the valve size, really. I think this port would really take off with a bigger valve size. But I'm almost afraid to put a bigger valve in because it is so dead quiet. Now, I'm not sure what the consensus on a quiet port is. I know what I think it is. I think that the flow, although it will not be laminar, it is less turbulent. That way it is quieter. So when it's less turbulent, meaning that it's going to have a Reynolds number, it'll be over 2,000, but the closer to 2,000 it is, the more laminar it is. So the lower the Reynolds number is, the more organized the flow is going to be, and the easier it's going to be to pump out the exhaust, I would think. Let me know if I'm wrong with that, guys. Okay, E7 exhaust. Outside is about standard size. All right. It's tough to see. But did what you can on the short side radius. It is all polished. This has been oiled, so it looks a little funny. Not a whole lot to see on the short side radius because there's not much to work with. I mean, yeah, you could probably work on making it a little bit wider than it is. I don't like to make it thin, so. But it does work quite well compared to other Ford exhausts. Okay, GT40p exhaust. The outside opening is about standard, maybe a touch bigger. I'm not thrilled about how the short side radius comes up, and then as it goes to the outside edge of the port, it goes down. There was no reason to do that. They should have just brought this floor here should have been brought up. It should have been this high. The whole port really should have been raised, to be honest. But what are you going to do? They have to fit it in the constraints of the chassis, I guess. Alright, guys. So, what can we say about the E7s versus the GT40Ps? Now, it's not 100% fair test either. The E7s have well over 100 hours into them. Well over. The GT40P has, some work I did 20 years ago, and then I wasted almost a whole weekend on it last weekend. But I did a bunch of flow tests, and I figured a bunch of stuff out because I wanted to do that on mine before the GT40Ps come in that I'm going to do for a customer. So I don't mind doing that extra work. It's good to be ahead of the game before it comes, Overall, the E7s that are hated universally everywhere in the world, become a really nice head if you do enough work to them, if you don't make them a sprinkler. You know, it's going to be tough to make the port big enough. It's only 146 and change. It's a tight port, but it starts out like 126 or 129 cc's is all it is stock. It's a tiny port. What does the tiny port do? Gives us our velocity, right, guys? You got to remember, right? The Mustang GTs, I think these were originally designed for a truck. Somebody can, let me know. But I think they were originally designed for a truck around 1987. But they also used that 87 Ford had the good fuel injection. They had that massive aluminum intake manifold. The trucks had that real tall one with the dual throttle bodies coming out the front at an angle. And the GTs had that huge mushroom type intake manifold that had the center throttle body. Now, I've done work to those center throttle body ones, the Mustang GT ones. They flow terrible. They flow horrendous. The one that I have that I cut in half with a bandsaw and poured it inside and did everything to it, I think I could only get about 160 CFM through it. And that's got a major amount of work to it. I don't remember what it was stock, but it was bad. Something to think about, right? It was more than enough with the intake manifolds and engines it was originally designed for. In fact, I'm sure those engines ran real well. I don't know if I've ever driven a bone stock GT. I've been in one once, and even as a young guy, I'm like, wow, this engine has absolutely no low-end torque. The guy stalled it like 3 times coming out of the driveway. But it sounded good. Maybe it says something about his driving ability. He was not one of my favorite people. All right, I'm blathering. Now I got to get Sophia to download these 3 videos and put them in a row so they're not 3 separate videos. So hopefully she'll do that for me tonight. Thanks a lot, guys.